Hi there, Booktube, it's Roz. Now, this is a video in which I'm going to talk about a handful of books which I've read in April, which I kind of want to recommend to you or highlight to you. I'm also going to highlight a question about books and reading and a topic that we don't talk about enough in our lives, and I will explain more. So there are 4 words that I deliberately chose not to put in the title of this video. Okay, and those 4 words are good, book, bowel, and cancer. Shall I explain more? Okay, well, I've been thinking for the last week or so about the concept of what is a good book? What do I think? What would I call a good book? And that was inspired by a video by Katie of Books and Things, which I will link to below, where she explores that topic in an interesting way. I've also been thinking about the fact that it's Bowel Cancer Awareness Month, because the lovely Charlie of Charlie Brooke Reads has sort of reminded those of us on Booktube about this by doing the Books for Bowel Cancer Readathon. And what Charlie knows is that there are, and I do too, there are certain key symptoms that it's really good for people to know about, which might give you early warning that you should check out whether there's any possibility that you might have bowel cancer. But because we don't like the words bowel and cancer, we tend to avoid thinking about these things, and that can mean that we don't get these things checked out soon enough. So I'm kind of sneaking in bowel cancer symptoms that you should talk about as per Charlie's Readathon, whilst also talking about some books which I think are good books and which I hope will help me arrive at some sort of personal definition of what makes a good book. So I hope you're along for the ride. Now, I'm going to start by just thinking about the good book principle. Okay, and the conclusion that Katie, I think, kind of came to at the end of her video was that a good book doesn't have to be an important book. It doesn't have to be a classic. It doesn't have to be literary. It can be in any genre, I guess, but it needs to do what it sets out to do well. And I think that's a good working definition. And so I'm going to kind of use that as I work through these books. But let's start with the first book. And that's this one, Story of a Murder by Hallie Rubenhold. Now, April, as well as being Bowel Cancer Awareness Month, is for me People April. This is the 3rd year that I've hosted this readathon, which is about reading books about people. And in the first year of People April, our group read was The 5 by Hallie Rubenhold, which is about the 5 women who are known to have been killed by the murderer known as Jack the Ripper. And when I heard, I loved that book. I really enjoyed that book. And I think all the People April group did too. So when I heard that Rubenhold had a new book coming out in March of 2025, I thought, I've got to try and get hold of this to read in April for People April. And my wonderful library service came up trumps and produced this book for me to read in April. Hurrah! Now, why does this link with bowel cancer? It has red on the cover, and that is the first of Charlie's Prompt Read a Book with red on the cover to remind us of the symptom, which is blood in our poo or bleeding from the bottom. So think red on the cover, and that's the thing to look out for. Now, is this a good book? Now, Rubenhold has a particular kind of like niche that she's sort of carved out for herself in writing social history linked to kind of criminality, offences, whatever, murders. But she also wrote one about sort of London prostitutes, Covent Garden ladies. Brilliant, yeah, great fun. As in The 5, this one she's taking a an infamous murder, in this case, that perpetrated by Dr. Crippen on his wife, who had various names in her life, but perhaps best known as Belle Elmore. That was her stage name when she performed in the musical. And what she sets out to do is, rather than focus on the perpetrator, the murderer, she looks more at the victims and the victims' lives, and uses that as a social history vehicle to, write about the times, about women's lives, for example, and in this case, to sort of focus in on two things, particularly the sort of lower middle class in Edwardian London, the people who performed in music hall, and also kind of about quack medicines and the world of sort of homeopathy, but not just that. No, sort of patent medicines and so on that was so huge in the sort of late 19th and early 20th century. So, and she does this so well. This is why I'd say this is absolutely a good book. She does it so well because what does she do? She does her research. It's very, very thorough. You get notes, you get references, you get a, bibliography, a further reading, a proper index, all the things that you kind of ideally want to see in a non-fiction book. But she does that at the same time as making it a really enjoyable read. You want to turn the pages, you want to know what's going to happen, but avoiding the sort of icky side of true crime where you feel like sort of, an unpleasant voyeur because of what the author focuses at. Instead, you can read this with a clear conscience, but at the same time, there's a sort of a degree of sort of plot and character to carry you along with enthusiasm. And so, wholeheartedly, a good non-fiction book and a good read, does what she sets out to do successfully. And what she's setting out to do is something that feels valid, has a point, I suppose. Prompt number 2, or shall we say symptom number 2, for us to look out for, is losing weight and not being sure why. And Charlie's sort of readathon prompt for that was to read a short book. So something, under 400 pages or shorter. Now, I love a short book. There's a good chance that if a book is both short and enjoyable, it's going to count, score highly with me in terms of good bookness. I love a book. I don't feel a book needs to be long to be good. It doesn't need to be, if it can be intense and interesting in a short space, that's a plus point from my point of view. I read a few good short things this month, but I'm going to talk about The Safekeep by Yael van der Wouden, which was 250 pages, but really packs, feels like quite a substantial book, even though it's really quite short. It covers a lot of ground. It covers a lot of ground in terms of characters. It covers a lot of ground in terms of sort of plot. There's lots of sort of twists in there. There's a lot of emotional ground covered, but also kind of context, I suppose, because in it, van der Wouden is writing about the Netherlands, the experience of World War II for the people in the Netherlands and certain sort of elements of that. Is it a good book? Well, prize judges certainly seem to think so. The Safekeep was on the Booker Prize shortlist in 2024. It's currently in the Women's Prize shortlist 2025, Women's Prize for Fiction, that is. It's also in the Walter Scott Prize for Historical Fiction shortlist and the Dylan Thomas Prize for young authors, authors 39 and younger. So, prize judges think it's good. Did I think it's good? Yes. It's not it's not a great book. It's not sort of totally amazing, but it's good because it's really good historical fiction. It's well written. Every sentence rolls along happily. It's got, but what makes it? Yeah, what gives it that? It's got a good sense of place. It's got a good sense of period, without that sort of hammering you on the head. The worst kind of historical fiction is the one where you think like, oh God, you really see she's done her research or he's done his research and wanted us not to fail to notice that, can't leave anything out. No sense of that in this. But what really kind of, I suppose, elevated it for me, I suppose, is that feeling that as an author, she's got something that she wants to tell us about, something, a kind of an element in history, and specifically sort of Dutch history, that she feels is maybe sort of not spoken about enough, maybe even brushed around under the carpet a bit, and she wants to bring that to the fore, but she does it in a way that works as fiction, that is a character-driven novel, not a lecture. So, yes, definitely a good book, and one I'd recommend along with the prize judges. Third symptom to look out for. I hope you're still with me. A change in your pooing habits. Okay, so how often, or unexpected, unexplained constipation or diarrhea, all of those things. They're one of the things that you need to look out for and respond if go to your doctor, ask about if they're happening. And naturally, the prompt for this is to read a book that is different from your normal reading habits, to make us think about what's different from our usual pooing habits. My book for this is this one, A Sunny Place for Shady People, 2024 novel by Mariana Enriquez, and I read it in English translation by McDowell. Now, is this a book that is outside my normal reading? Absolutely. But it's inside my normal reading in that it's translated fiction, and that's very much my one of my chosen sort of enthusiasms. But it's a book of short stories, and Ros doesn't like short stories really. No, I do not like short stories. They're not usually my format of choice, shall we say. And more than that, this is a book of horror, sort of. Yeah, it's a book with ghosts in it and supernatural things happen, and there's elements of body horror in this book. So, right outside my comfort zone, my usual habits. Is it a good book? Now, I think one of the things that Katie talks about in her video is whether a book you don't particularly like can still be a good book. Whether you can recognise that something is good of its type, or well written and a good book, but it's not your favourite. And I think yes, it can. Reading this, I could absolutely tell that it was a good book of horror short stories. But did I absolutely love that? No, not really. It's still not really a Ros thing. It's good to read outside your comfort zone, isn't it? It's intellectually stimulating to do so. But this didn't sort of turn me into a complete convert, I suppose, to horror-based short stories. But it was the April pick for Reading the Globe Fiction, which I'm hosting along with Katja of Page Shadows with Katja, and we will be doing a live show about it next weekend. I'll put the details in the show notes for this video. So if you want to tell me why I should have enjoyed this more, come along to the live show and talk about it. Or but also, if you want to know more about the book, you can watch it afterwards. So I will say no more about this one. Fourth symptom to look out for is feeling tired all the time. Well, we might say, I often feel tired all the time, but feeling tired all the time without there being a good reason for it. Okay. And Charlie's prompt for that, very kindly, was to do a bit of self-care, to treat yourself at some point in April. I've had a few nice treats in April, but probably the best of my April treats was I had Tilly and her baby down to visit, and we went for a lovely, lovely walk with Steve, my husband, with Alf, my son, around the Knepp estate, which is in Sussex, near where I live, about 30, 40 minutes drive from here. What is the Knepp estate? It's a wonderful, fascinating, inspiring place to go for a walk because it's I would say it's groundbreaking, but a pioneer of rewilding, but not rewilding, in, I don't know, Yellowstone Park or somewhere in the Scottish Highlands, rewilding in an area that was previously intensively farmed and finding a way to make that work in the sort of agricultural landscape of southern England. And there's a book, Isabella Tree, written about this called Wouden, which I would enthusiastically recommend for you to read. But the book that I'm going to talk about in association with my little self-care treat of a walk around Knepp is a picture book. Now then, people know April's other wonderful readathon, which I hope you've been taking part in, is Picture This, which is about reading picture books in April. And Tilly and I treated ourselves to a new picture book while we were at the Knepp estate. Because why we've particularly gone for the walk this time is because to see the storks nesting at Knepp, because storks are an iconic bird. But they became extinct in the UK about 400 years ago, and Knepp is one of couple of places in England now that is setting to reintroduce wild storks. And what a joy! They are such glorious birds, very special. And of course, associated with babies, because certainly in the UK, the idea is that the story is that storks bring newborn babies. They're what the stork brought. It's therefore very, very lovely that this book is When the Storks Came Home, and it's about bringing storks back to a village in England, and it's sort of inspired by what they've done at Knepp, and it's by Isabella Tree, who's the one of the couple who have rewilded the Knepp estate. And is it a good book? Is the next question. Okay, yes, I think so. I think it's a good book. As a picture book, and I suppose thinking about that, if something's a good book, do you necessarily want to read it? I think we can sometimes forget what a joy picture books are when we don't have small children, or as we get older. And actually, it is wonderful, and another kind of self-care, really, to be drawn back to the pleasures of reading picture books. And so that's why I love Picture This. And thank you to Jack of Spread Bookjoy for and Shelly of Sherry Swearingen for reminding us to do that each April. Now then, why do I think this is a good book in picture book terms? Why? Because it's got a lovely story to tell about, with a charming protagonist, and a kind of a message without being messagey. It's about setting to do something valuable. In that, the girl in the story is fascinated by birds, and she hears about storks, and she wants to help be part of bringing storks back to her part of England, and succeeds. And that's heartwarming. But, what makes it a good picture book, I suppose, is because the pictures in the book are absolutely integral to its success. In fact, more important than the words. This is a lovely book because of the lovely pictures of birds in the book. Not just storks, there's other lovely birds in the book. Here we go. But the artwork is deeply satisfying and delightful. Look at this as a centre spread, and that really epitomises what is gorgeous about storks. And so a lovely book and a good reminder as to why don't dismiss picture books just because you're a grown up now. Okay. Fifth symptom to talk about is a pain or a lump in your tummy, something that causes discomfort or an unusual feeling. And Charlie's prompt for this, to lodge that in our heads and remind us, is reading a book that you've been avoiding, because, we do tend to avoid talking about and thinking about and recognising things that are to do with our bowels, our intestines, things that, it's worrying, and so we put it to one side. And then, if we do that, we can miss the opportunity to pick something up early and get it treated. So, a book that you've been avoiding. My book that I've been avoiding is, that I've got around to in April, is an exciting one for me. I haven't finished it in April, I've just started it, and it may be that I never finish it, because the book is Finnegan's Wake by James Joyce. Now, Ulysses by James Joyce was a book that I avoided for years and then finally read and, found an extraordinarily rich and rewarding experience. And so I knew of Finnegan's Wake, and I knew that it was sort of notoriously challenging as a book to read. And, I suppose I thought maybe it might be one that I'd never attempt. But Roy Reads Anything and Alan of Big Hard Books and Classics kind of pulled together a group of us to give it a go. They've both read it before, but it's new to some of us, and an interesting new challenge, I suppose. And I'm really glad that I'm doing it. Is it? Oh, there's a Discord group, and it's not too late to join us, because we're going to spread it over quite a long time, and we may, as I say, we may not read all the chapters. It's more a sort of dip in and experience sort of thing. Is Finnegan's Wake a good book? Now, there is an interesting question, because I am not yet sure about that. I think it's possible that it's an important book, but not necessarily a good book, in that it may be, and a judgment is still out on this for me, it may be a book that is where the author was so concerned with experimenting with language and with structure that he almost forgot to put in some elements that might be needed to make it a really good book. I'm not sure. I'm waiting to find out, and I think that the process of finding out is going to be interesting. So, to wrap up, what do I think? What do I think about what makes a good book? I think I agree with Katie that it's a book where the author, a book that does what it sets out to do well, where the author achieves what they wanted to do successfully in a way that's satisfying for the readers. I'd add another element to that, though, to complete that definition for me, for what makes, in my eyes, a good book. And that's that it's got to be worth the effort. It's got to do something. The thing that it sets out to do. It can't just succeed in doing it. That's got to have been, I don't know, in some sense, a worthwhile thing to set out to do. A book that's just retreading what's been done before, I don't know, to a formula, replicating a formula because the author knows that'll make money. That doesn't make a good book for me. It doesn't need to be startlingly original. It doesn't need to be Finnegan's Wake, for example. But I need to count something as a good book. I don't necessarily need to like the book. It doesn't necessarily need to be a book that I love. but I need to feel that the author loves it. I need to feel that there's a bit of love and passion or enthusiasm, a certain spark in the book, that the author had an idea or perhaps just a sense of fun that they wanted to share with us, the readers, and that's what makes it a good book. There you go. Tell me what you think, and feel free to make a video yourself about either bowel cancer symptoms and bowel cancer awareness, or good books, or both.